Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man's Core channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'll be reading a chapter out of my South Carolina Ghosts from the Coast of the Mountains book by Nancy Roberts. And the chapter out of here is called The Singing Portrait. So here we go. The horse chose his footing carefully, for the road was deep cut, and the high banks added to the darkness. Joseph Newton was on his way home from his father's store. Fog lay like a white shroud in the low places of the old stagecoach trace. Joseph felt his horse tremble. The bay mare was a sensitive animal, and he wondered what she had heard. In a few minutes they were directly opposite the Douglas home. From the hill above, wafted on the early spring breeze, came a strange and beautiful melody. Newton had heard that the Douglas family was visiting friends in nearby Newbury, even if they were not. What earthly reason could there be for music coming from the house at this hour? Reining in the mare at the road leading to the house, Joseph decided to investigate. Sometimes he had seen lights burning long after midnight in the doctor's little office building, but tonight both office and house were in darkness. The melody he had heard on the road was louder than ever. He mounted the porch, drawn despite himself. Although the tones had a certain weird quality, they were also enticing. The scent of yellow jasmine from the yard enveloped him as he stared in through the parlor window. The room was drenched in moonlight. He could see the fireplace and the chairs on each side of it, and then he noticed the portrait. It was hung over the mantel for as long as he could remember, but it had never looked like this. The face of the beautiful woman stared at him. It was almost incandescent, and the very canvas seemed to pulsate with life. To his surprise, he realized that the music was coming from the painting. Newton was so petrified he couldn't move. The beautiful song seemed to hold him captive, surround him, possess him. He was unaware of how long he stood there listening. There was a shattering crash of thunder, and he was jolted out of his trance. Man, to be honest with you, I would be scared to death if I heard music coming out of the old house and it was coming from within the painting that's hanging on the mantle above the fireplace. I don't know what to think of it at that point, but I know that I'll be running for sure. The music from the parlor ceased, and the face in the portrait flickered like a candle flame and went out. Now the room was in total darkness. Staccato spatters of rain took aim at the house and at him. Wind hassled through the bushes and shook the bare branches of the treetops, sending down a shower of twigs. Then it was bright as day all around him, and a sharp, explosive crack, as if lightning had struck just a few feet away. Newton fled with fumbling fingers. He tied the mare's reins from the hemlock, leaped on her back, and as the rain swept down in sheets, horse and rider galloped away from the rambling old house. Like a pair of frightened phantoms, they sped through the night and past the churchyard, the white marble tombstones illuminated by flashes of lightning. Newton glanced toward the cemetery. He knew that Miss Anna was long dead, and he also knew that it was her portrait that had always hung over the mantel. He was frightened and bewildered. Anna Dixon Hardy had died on April 18th, 1861. He recalled the big family picnics on the church grounds after service, and the old lady everyone called Miss Anna. Even though he had been a child, he could see her now, lips pressed sternly together, a steely glint in her gray eyes. And then the memories began to blur. How could the lovely face in the portrait be Miss Anna? All he knew was that he must see that face again. The following night, there was a full moon, and Newton was determined to go back. Again, fog from the river lay upon much of the road. He would mount a slight rise and come out of it. And then he was part of that misty world again. Strange shapes would loom ahead of him. Dark limbs reach out like twisted arms. He began to think this was a foolish errand and was only jarred from his reverie by the behavior of his mare. She would shy seemingly at nothing, walk ever more slowly until finally she came to a complete halt in front of the graveyard. Good Lord! Why did the animal have to stop here? Yeah, I'll be wondering that myself. I don't want to run into no ghost in the cemetery either. That might be evil. Here's a picture of the front door of the house this person is describing. And it says on the bottom that despite his fear, he decided to enter the old house. The front door was unlocked. Then came a wild and eerie shriek. So let's continue on with the story and see what else he finds in this old house, shall we? He prodded her side sharply and surprised by this unaccustomed treatment. The mare leaped ahead and was off running. He finally managed to slow her to a walk and held out his lantern to watch for the red clay ruts that would signal the driveway of the Douglas house. He began to think they had passed it when suddenly there was the road. No wheel prints or hoof marks had been made that day in the damp earth, and the rain of the night before had obliterated the prints of his own horse. Everything was just as he had left it. No one had been in or out of the house. Newton tethered his horse beside the porch. There was a rush of air past his face as he flung up his arm. Bats! Ugh! How he despised them. As he started toward the porch, a cloud obscured the moon, and for a few minutes all was blackness. Aware of the beating of his own heart and of every night sound, he felt his way up the steps to the window where he had stood the night before. As if a hand had drawn aside a curtain, the cloud passed and moonlight streamed into the room. There was no music, and the face of the portrait was scarcely visible. The moonlight was not upon it, but he felt certain the silvery streak on the wall would soon reach the portrait. He settled himself in a more comfortable position and waited. He had not been there long when he had heard a faint sound far off in the distance that he supposed to be the sound of a bird. But it was not the song of a bird at all. It was rather the soft, beaconing notes of a woman's voice raised in song. He gazed at the portrait. It was washed in moonlight. The music grew louder, and a light appeared to emanate from the picture itself. He felt that he was looking far back into the portrait, much as one would gaze down a long corridor, and the face at the end of it grew more distinct. As the music increased in intensity, the exquisite features and large, beautiful eyes assumed a startlingly alive appearance. He had a sensation of being irresistibly drawn toward the picture, and he decided to enter the house. He found the front door unlocked, the door to the parlor open, and the room flooded with light. The light had a bluish cast to it, and he saw immediately that the picture was its source. He stood and listened as the alluring voice sang on and on. But he could not see the eyes, and he knew he must look the woman full in the face. He stepped into the path of light, but he had no sooner done so than he heard a wild and eerie shriek. He shuddered, but continued to look at the woman, and as he did, a change began to come over the portrait. The face was aging rapidly, and in a matter of seconds, there was Miss Anna. The white ruff was around her face in the severe style worn by elderly women of the Civil War era. Her lips were tightly compressed, and the gray eyes, if anything, were hostile. Fear shot through him like the blade of a knife. Outside, his mare gave a whinny, and Newton was ready to leave. He never returned, and he always wondered about the portrait. Others heard the nocturnal music, but few stayed long to investigate. No one lived in the old house after the 1950s, and it was void of furnishings, but the singing portrait still exists. It was discovered in the home of Miss Anna's great-granddaughter, Mrs. J.T. Ritchie, near Greenwood, South Carolina. As yet, I haven't heard it sing, said Mrs. Ritchie, but I do remember from my youth how her eyes never seemed to leave me when I practiced the piano there in the parlor. Even now, I can recall the feeling that they were watching me. The painting itself is an artistic treasure, for it was done by the internationally known artist John Scarborough. During the first half of the 19th century, Scarborough painted many prominent people as well as Miss Anna. How could he have known that one of his portraits would be used to help the ghost of a once beautiful woman return? The end. But yeah, that is crazy to think that ghosts can attach themselves to portraits of the former likenesses, if you will, and somehow summon enough energy to either sing or talk through it. That would be creepy. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more book reading content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Quarter channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor. I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.